I'm here with a fun felted Japanese knot bag. It's made in one piece on the 46 or 48 needle circular knitting machines. You do need to use a 100% wool. This is wool of the Andes. It's a Peruvian wool. This is amber heather for the color. Makes a beautiful, varied colored fabric. Look at that. I did put a button closure on mine just to keep it so that things couldn't pop out, but you don't have to. This is a perfect project bag or a little bag to carry with you on your wrist so that you can keep your wallet and your keys and your phone handy when you don't have pockets. And let's get started making this beautiful little Japanese knot bag. Super easy technique once you learn the steps. I used my 46 needle AliExpress king size circular knitting machine and wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn. This is the amber heather color. It used probably about 60 grams of yarn. These are 50-gram balls. So you need 2 balls, but that's okay because you can make other really cool little felted projects with the rest of your wool. This was completely knit in one piece, starting at the end of a long handle or the short handle. It's up to you. End of a handle strap, working the full length of the handle strap, then adding the stitches that go all the way across, working down the bag, working up the bag. Remember, this is all flat. Then casting off stitches and working the second handle. It's really that easy. I'm going to let you know right up front, there is a tricky bit, and that is when you get to the end of the length of the handle, cast on with waste yarn, a zip strip, and then add in your regular yarn. So for a few rows, you're actually working stitches on the strap and waste yarn. And then once you get back after finishing with your waste yarn, your strap is still growing. You're going to drop the waste yarn and the zip strip and then start knitting across with the main yarn. That's all it is. So on my pattern, this is my best guess. We are going to cast on 11 stitches with waste yarn and then a zip strip. We will work 45 rows and then don't cut your main yarn. You're going to hold it over to the side. You're going to add waste yarn for 29 stitches to start off with. Cast on 29 stitches, work back across, drop the waste yarn, pick up the main yarn, work out and back, drop the main yarn, pick up the waste yarn. We're going to go across and we will add one more stitch on the waste yarn. That way we will have 30 stitches across, which will give us our 11 plus 30 to give us 41. Then I will go back across, work the waste yarn, drop the waste yarn, pick up the main yarn, work back and across the main yarn, drop the main yarn, do the waste yarn, and then I'm going to drop the waste yarn. I know this is a lot of, but this is how my brain works. And I wanted to make sure that I gave you the whole rigmarole to start off with and see if you want to try it. I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited to see how this works. So I'm dropping the waste yarn. I'm picking up my zip strip, which is a piece of waste yarn that you only work one row. And that will make it so the waste yarn can be pulled off really easy after we've bound our edges. So I will work my one row of waste yarn up to the handle. I will drop that, and then I will go out and back with the with the main yarn, and then continue across with the main yarn. And now I can continue working my main yarn, and I will work 90 rows of the main yarn. Then I'm going to cast off. I'm going to start a waste yarn cast off on the body of the bag. I'm going to do a waste yarn cast off for 30 stitches. Drop that yarn, pick up the main yarn, and work out and back. Now I'm starting on my handle right there. Drop the main yarn, pick up the waste yarn, out and back, and then drop the waste yarn, pick up the main yarn, and then one more time out and back with the waste yarn, drop the waste yarn completely. Now these are going to be live loops just hanging out there. I don't really want them to be live, so I'm going to pick them up off the needles with the long piece of the waste yarn and the darning needle, just to have a drawstring going through them to keep them from falling off or to keep them from running down. I think that's going to be important. And then I will continue on working the short handle, which is only going to be 30 stitches long, until I get to the end. I'll work some rows of waste yarn and have it all come off. The edges will be a single crochet bind off. Then the waste yarn will be removed, and then we can sew it together. We'll be sewing the sides together, and the short handle will get brought over and sewn onto the top of the bag here. The long handle will get brought over and sewn onto the top of the bag there. And then we will have the basic bag. It's going to be too big and floppy because it's only a single layer of knitting. Then we're going to felt it. All I'm going to do is wash it in hot water and rinse it in cold water. And if it's not felted enough, I'll wash it in hot water again and rinse it in cold water. Wring it out, block it, just laying it to shape. And then we will see if the Japanese knot bag that I'm felting with the Wool of the Andes yarn worked. I'm excited. I hope you are. Let's start knitting. Please continue to watch the whole video all the way through once before you start doing your knitting, so that way you make sure you know all of my modifications, because I might say something like I did here and then go on and do something a little bit different. So to start off with, we are going to do 11 stitches of waste yarn. Now, something that you need to remember is when you're casting on in a panel, you have to end on an odd number. If you end on an even number, your yarn is going to be behind your needle instead of in front. So you see how stitch 1 here, it went under the needle. Stitch 2, it's going behind the needle. Stitch 3 is in front, 4 is behind, 5 is in front. You see how when it's in front, the hook of the needle actually pulls the yarn down. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is 11. And so that means it's going to pull down and be ready to stitch that, ready to stitch that now, because we can pull it down to the inside. We are not increasing any stitches right here. We are just going to work back and forth a couple times. I want to make sure that I end the main part of the waste yarn on the left-hand side. So that's enough of that. I'm going to just cut that and drop it. Now we're going to put on a zip strip, and the zip strip, I call it that. I don't know if anybody else does, but that's what I call it, is the piece of yarn that goes on here to make it easy to remove the cast on waste yarn. And it's only one row across. And then you drop this yarn. That's it. That's all you do with it. That's everything. Now what we're going to do is grab the Wool of the Andes yarn, and I like to kind of smush my yarn a little bit. I'm going to be letting it roll around in a box and taking the yarn from the outside. It seems to come off easier that way, and you don't end up with any of those little knots on the inside of the ball. So that's what I'm going to do. And at this point right here, I'm going to leave yarn on the inside so that I have my yarn to do my single crochet bind off at the end. I'm going to reset my counter. And now I'm just going to work back and forth, making sure that my ends here get knit. The edges of your panel, you want to make sure that they get knit completely. So coming up and going down. There we go. And it comes up, take it down, and back across. And now I am just going to continue on until I am at 40 rows. Oh, I'll meet you back here when I'm at 40 rows. All right, we're at 40 rows. This is part of my figuring things out. And I'm not sure if my handle is going to be long enough by the time we're all done, because I'm planning on felting this. That's going to shrink it. I think 40 might be what I need for the knot side. What we're going to do now is we are going to be working across to this last stitch right here with the main yarn. All right, then I'm going to bring it and just drop it around the corner here. And we're going to pick up some waste yarn to cast on. So we're picking up some waste yarn to cast on with. And I'm going to cast on 29 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I'm casting on 29. We will be adding one more stitch the next time we come down to this end, but you can only cast on with the long tail cast on odd numbers. So now we are going to go back and make sure that that yarn is being caught. There we go. So right here, I'm going to knit that. So now we're picking up this yarn. We're going to make sure it's under this peg right here and then pull it back across because we want to make sure that that stitch gets knitted right there, there, out and back to right here. Now, I just realized that this one had dropped off. You just have to make sure these stitches get knitted all the way. All the way out. And I'm going to add one stitch here at this edge, so that way I'm at 30 now. And we're going to knit back across. There. Pull all the way down in. Then we're going to back it up just a little bit so that this stitch gets knitted. Okay, so there, all the way down. Drop that one. This one goes under that peg now and back in so that it can get worked. There we go. There. All the way to there. I'm going to have to do one more down and lay a zip strip in so that this waste yarn will be able to come off, but I'm not there yet. So pull that one down. Pull this one around. Knit across. Under that one. And back across. There we go. Now we're going to cut that waste yarn, grab another piece of waste yarn for the zip strip. It's going to be one time across, right here. All the way to there. Drop that down. Pick up the main yarn. Put that through. Knit across. And now we're going to be knitting all the way around to the last stitch. So at this point right now, actually at this point right now, we're just casting on, for real, the main yarn. Finally being cast on with the main yarn, and now working our way across and to the end. At this point here, we are now going to be working straight panel, 41 stitches total for 90 rows. I'm going to reset my counter so that I know 90 rows because I forget things. All right, I'll meet you back here when we're at 90 on the counter. Okay, I don't want to end up with a knot on the in the middle, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that last little bit of the yarn in and open up my new skein. And since I'm starting it on the edge, I'm just going to leave a little extra to pull down. There we go. And away we go. We're going to come back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 11 stitches. We're going to pick up some waste yarn. We're not going to worry about a zip strip. Alrighty, so now we're going to work our way down and back from here with the waste yarn all the way to the end and back to here. Then we're going to drop the waste yarn around that needle. All right, we're going to pick up the main yarn and bring it under that red finger right here so that it will knit, and we'll go across and back to right here. We're going to bring this around that needle. We're going to pick up the main yarn or the waste yarn now, and we're going to bring it under that finger right there. Pull down. And go back. Now we're going to knit across. So back here, we need to make sure that that gets pulled all the way down in before we drop the yarn. That's it. See, I'm learning. As we go along, I'm learning too. Now this waste yarn, I'm going to go, it's around behind the needle. It goes under that finger there so that it comes in front. Gets dropped all the way down. And it's only fiddly for a couple rows. Now we're going to work our way back to that where that handle is being worked. All the way to the last stitch. We're going to drop this. I'm going to knit down and back on that. And remember, this yarn comes around under that finger there and back into the holder so that it will knit the whole row. Down and back. And at this point right now, I'm not going to knit this yarn, the waste yarn, onto a darning needle. And then as I'm coming back, you see how these are just ready to be picked up. And I see that, oh, almost dropped that one. Now, the reason why I'm picking it up, even though I used waste yarn, is I don't want those stitches to come loose while I am knitting the handle. But I'm not going to worry about pulling this down tight. I am just using this as a holder instead of putting like little stitch holders on the ends of each of those loops. This is just to keep it from unraveling. I'm going to go back so that I can knit my handle. So now we're down to just knitting the 11 stitches for that handle. Just like that. We're down to just the handle, going back and forth. Let's get this knit, and then we will do the single crochet bind off on all of the waste yarn edges. Oh, okay, my counter is not going to count because I am not near my counting needle. Some little stitch markers on the edge. I'll just count it up every 10 rows. Now we're going to do a waste yarn cast off. I am going to leave a little bit of yarn to the inside for my single crochet binding and drop that in. And now we are going to just waste yarn cast off and run this off. There we go. Get this out of the way. So looking at this, we're going to stretch. Set those over to the side. So far, this is working just like I thought it would. We have this edge. We've got the handle here. We've got the handle here. This handle will end up getting attached here. Let's fold it just so we can see. This is our long handle. This is our short handle. Just tuck that to the inside. And when it's all stitched together and felted, that long handle will go through the short handle, and then you'll have a handle for your wrist and a pretty little bag to put a project in. This is going to be so cute. This is a 4.5 size 7 crochet hook, and I'll show you on this handle right here. When you're doing a crocheted bind off on a waste yarn, what you're looking for is that last loop that the main yarn came through. You're going to do a slip knot. And I'm using the yarn that I left, so I didn't have to tie any yarn on. I'm going under the loop, wrapping over, pulling through. Now I have 2 loops on my hook. Wrap over and pull through. Under that loop, wrap over, pull through, wrap over, pull through. And that's a single crochet. Now this is US terminology, so call it whatever it is where you are. But it's just a simple 1 loop is on the hook, you go under that loop, pick up the yarn, pull it through. Now you have 2 loops on the hook, wrap over and pull through. And I'm going to do this on all edges where there's waste yarn. I'm not doing anything else. It is all just a simple single crochet. And after I've got all of them done, I'll come back and show you taking the waste yarn off. But on this one right here, I wanted to make sure that you saw that when you get to this very last stitch here on the edge, make sure that you go through that one. That is a stitch that counts. When you've done your last single crochet, do a slip stitch in that loop, and that locks it off. Now I'll show you what it looks like with the waste yarn taken off. So we're going to take the waste yarn off. Boop. And now we've got this really nice, tidy edge that makes it really easy to sew on to the other side. I'm going to go ahead and get all the rest of these finished with the single crochet edge, and I'll be back. And now we're going to take this waste yarn off, and this is the super fun waste yarn to take off now. Usually cast on yarn is not, but with a zip strip, you can go like this, pull, and now that just comes right off. Look at that. You never even know it was there. And the same over here. Just make sure you're not tied in a knot. All right, not tied in a knot, not tied in a knot. Grab the end of your zip strip, pull it, and that just comes right off. All right, so now I'm not worrying about blocking this or anything. It could be easier to sew it together if I blocked it, but I'm going to be felting it. I don't need to block it. But now what we're going to do is come up here and match up the center of the top section. There, see this bound off edge on both of those. We're going to put one handle going up the front side of it, and one handle is coming up the back side. Just like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and just match these edges. You could do any kind of stitch you want. And we're just doing a running stitch. We're a running back stitch to stitch these sides together. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. The bag is getting felted. It doesn't have to be fancy. All right, so now tie it off to the end that's there on the end that's left over from the binding. I'm going to trim this off just a bit because it doesn't need to be that long. And I'm going to trim this one off a bit because it doesn't need to be that long. And now we're going to just do our running back stitch where we're going to go in and come up like that. Then we're going to come back and skip forward right here on the back side. We're going to come forward. See, this is where the yarn's coming out. And then go back down. And that's all I'm going to do. It's just a running back stitch, just like if you're sewing with a hand needle. It's just this is easier because you can really see where your stitches are when you are up close. For you right here, you can't see the difference of, you know, one stitch to the next stitch because I'm stitching with the same yarn. But it's making a nice clean edge. It's also going to help it to not roll when it is being felted. Because there's a little extra yarn right here, it's going to be a slightly stiffer edge. So I'll meet you back here when I've got, basically, I think I'm just going to get everything stitched together. I'm going to stitch the handle down, matching the outsides, and just stitch the handle exactly the same way with the running back stitch. And I will meet you back here when I have both handles sewn down and the sides. So look at this, all dry, all felted. You don't see the definition, and nothing is going to fall through this. Here, turn it right inside out so you can see what the seams look like after they were felted. These seams are not going to come apart. I can trim off that little piece without worry. Any little strands sticking out, you can trim them. this little rolled edge right here, that's just the natural edge. I didn't do any hemming on the handles. This fabric is so soft and flexible. Now, the only thing that I noticed is that the opening here is a little bit wide. I probably could have made the handles, instead of 11, I probably could have made them more like 15 for both of the handles. But you know, it's going to work. What I'm going to do is just pinch this and sew a button, and then pinch the other side and sew on an elastic needle and thread. This is button thread. It would be great for is a small project bag. So I'm going to pinch this. All I'm doing is basically making like a letter S, and I'm going to pinch that together and lay my button on here. I'm going to come in between those layers. See right here? I'm going to come between those layers for the first bit, and then up on the button. Flip. Yeah, so I'm just going to sew the button on, and I'm going to hide my stitches as best I can. Oop. Basically, we're tying knot. And that's plenty. That makes a nice secure knot for that button. It's not going to come off. I'm going to slip a hair tie. First thing I'm going to do is tie a knot in the end of the hair tie. So when I'm stitching, I can stitch kind of through the knot. Put that in here like this. And that knot is getting trapped down inside. Basically, stitch things in however it makes you happy. So we can close the bag like this, so it's not going to go popping open. And then you take the long handle through the short handle like that. And you've got a lovely knot bag. Look at that. You could have a project in here on the go. Just button it up and take it along with you wherever you need to go. If you enjoyed this video, please click that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video with your friends, and make sure to let me know if you enjoyed this and if you want to see more. I really like making these projects for you. Tell me what type of instructions are best for you. Tell me that down in the comments below. Remember, go out, do something creative, take care of yourself so you can take care of those around you. And I want to see you back here again really soon. Bye-bye.